Professor Hamilton. Welcome, folks, to the very first symposium entitled Understanding Our Neurodiverse World, a symposium on best practices for teaching business and economics to students who learn differently at Landmark College. We want to start with a local/regional symposium, and we'll grow it from here. So this is a wonderful first effort, and I want to thank you all for attending. And I really want to thank all those responsible for running the center. More on that in a minute, and also engineering this great symposium. And we have a team there in the academic area and business as well, and ELSER that have been helping with this. So my job right now is to just simply introduce our keynote speaker, Paul McCulley. But Roxy's right when it comes to the cell phone. Two things happen, right? We ask you to turn them off. Sometimes it happens. And if it doesn't, you turn them off after your embarrassing ringtone tells everybody what to listen to. So, pick your poison. I would turn them off now. Thank you very much. Now, for our keynote speaker, a little bit of information that may or may not be in the program. I'm going to read this information and add a few other comments. Paul McCulley, longtime philanthropist and former executive with the Pacific Investment Management Company, PIMCO. He currently serves as senior fellow in financial macroeconomics and adjunct professor of law at Cornell University Law School. Paul founded and endowed the Morgan Le Fay Dreams Foundation to focus on charities devoted to young adults and education about 10 years ago. And about 2 years ago, Paul was incredibly generous. He's a dad of a former Landmark College student, CS major, who did really well here. He provided a transformative gift to form Landmark College's Morgan Le Fay Center for Advances in Economics, Business, and Entrepreneurship Instruction. And this is our first symposium. Now, a little story. I remember talking with Paul at the time, 2 years ago, about this support for the college because, again, he was convinced that we do have a really, really special model here. Of course, he's got the proof, which was his son at the time in his success here at the college. And I remember talking with Paul about the funding that we needed for the college, and we were building a STEM center at the time, and talking about that. And of course, he's thinking macro. He's thinking macro all the time. And I was like, STEM center. And I think afterwards, Paul said, I've never had so much trouble giving away $1 million in my whole life. So I quickly retreated and said, yes, the center, I'll think macro too. So, and of course he was right. So we've started this center and worked really hard. We're about 2-3 years into our first phase. And it's been wonderful for the college and for our students. And I know that we're going to grow it from here. I'm looking at students right now in the audience, and some of these students are baccalaureate students, and they're in the liberal studies program. But when we ask them, what's your major, 3 of them in 1 week told me business. And I said, oh, business. We don't have a business bachelor's program. Yeah. And so we need a business bachelor's degree program. Roxy, no pressure, okay? So frame it out today, all right? Now, Paul had a celebrated career at PIMCO, and he has been, according to the Wall Street Journal, a fixture in the world of financial media, appearing regularly on CNBC, Bloomberg Television, as well as in print media. Paul is credited with coining 2 phrases that have become part of the macroeconomic lexicon after the global financial crisis. And that is, one is shadow banking, which refers to financial institutions that provide the same services as traditional banks, but outside the regulations of the banking industry. And Minsky moment, which is a sudden collapse in asset values as part of a credit or business cycle. And Paul's scholarly research has been quoted widely and has been called magisterial by Nobel Prize-winning economist and New York Times columnist Paul Krugman. Now, Paul has, and I know Paul now, he's a friend of mine, and he has a macro perspective. He really does. Macro. We're filling him in on the center, he's saying macro. And he truly does, but when I think of Paul, I think of our motto, which is nos que te ipsum, know thyself. He's very, very much tuned into knowing your own strengths and weaknesses and being honest about yourself. I love the fact that he has this macro perspective, but he understands it starts with a human being and whether they truly know themselves. And Paul, he wants to help people. And I think he's at least as successful at helping people as he is in the world of economics. And we want to thank you for everything you've done for the college, Paul. So, Paul McCulley.
Thank you. That was way too long, Peter. Thank you. I really appreciate that. good to see straight in front of me the other Peter, my dear friend Peter Fisher from Dartmouth, a fellow macro maven and public policy maven. What I want to do today is not about landmark, though I can talk forever about landmark, as you know, but actually give you a perspective on what's going on domestically and globally in the interaction between public policy and economics. And to start off our discussion, I'm going to have two questions. So you're going to be involved from the very beginning. I'm going to have two questions, and then we will go from there, hopefully, to an understanding of what the heck is going on in the political season. Question number one. How many people in the room believe in democracy? I think we got a majority. I think we got a majority. A majority of small d Democrats. I want to stress small d Democrats. I'm not trying to offend anybody. Small d Democrats. That's the first question. Second question. How many people in the room believe in capitalism? Okay, somebody in the back answer the question, do we have a majority? Let's have the hands again for capitalism. Do I have a majority? It's a lot closer. Do I have a majority? I'm going to go with we have a majority, but it is a cliffhanger. It is a cliffhanger. Oh, okay, it's not a cliffhanger. We got somebody who's willing to move to that side of the equation. So we have a majority of small d Democrats and a majority of people who believe in capitalism. That's the test results. As a teacher, I can grade the test. And the grade is we have a room full of schizophrenics. But there is good news. We have a room full of schizophrenics, but you are rational schizophrenics. And that's going to be my theme for the next 45 minutes. You are schizophrenics because you believe both in democracy and capitalism, but you're rational schizophrenics. That's my opening thesis. Let me explain the rationality. Democracy and capitalism are governance systems. Governance systems. Every institution, every system, every organization has either an explicit or implicit governance system. I trust we have one here at Landmark. There is a governance system. Most of us try to have one at home. A governance system on the relationships between the people in the family. So a governance system is not a pejorative comment. It's simply a necessity for life. Democracy is a governance system. Capitalism is a governance system. But they are inherently antithetical. They are inherently antithetical, which is why if you believe in both, you have some cognitive dissonance that you need to explain. You have some explaining to do. Now let's walk through the inherent characteristics of the two systems. Democracy is founded upon what core proposition? That's not a rhetorical question. Someone can answer it. What is the one-liner? What is the bumper sticker to define democracy? Majority rules. You're almost there. You get a B. What's the A answer?
By the people.
Huh?
By the people.
By the people, that's a B plus answer.
One man, one vote.
Market system?
A answer. A minus answer. One person, one vote.
Old school, you know.
That's why I gave you an A minus, man. One person, one vote. That is the A answer. Are the votes equal?
Yes.
Alleged.
Allegedly. Okay, allegedly. We're dealing in a stylized world, I acknowledge. We're dealing in a stylized world. In a half hour, we get to the real world. We're dealing in a stylized world. So, democracy is a governance system founded on the proposition of one person, one vote, and all votes are putatively equal. Therefore, we can logically conclude that democracy is inherently a socialist system. Can you think of anything more socialist than one person, one vote, all votes are equal, majority rule? Is that a good 4-point outline for democracy? That's called socialism. That is called socialism. I'm not saying it positively or negatively, simply descriptively. You can't conclude otherwise from the core parameters of the system except to say it is socialism. Now, we got that system. Capitalism. Who wants to take on the question of the defining characteristic of capitalism as a governance system? Who wants to put it in, what is Tweeter? I don't tweet. It's 140 characters, right? Who wants to give me the 140 character foundation of capitalism?
Supply and demand.
That's an incomplete. I'm not going to give you a grade.
Money rules?
Money wins?
Money rules.
Money
Like
rules.
the more money, the goal is, it's money driven.
Okay. That's at least a B answer, if not a B plus.
Market system.
Whatever the market.
Market system.
What the market will bear.
What the market will bear.
Control of capital.
Control of capital. These are all characteristics. But let's do a comparison in the back of our mind to our definition of democracy. Money rules. That was a good foundational starting point.
Survival of the fittest.
Survival of the fittest. You're almost there. You're almost there. Capitalism is a cumulative voting system. Everyone know what a cumulative voting system is? Okay. Means I need to backtrack and do some explaining here myself. Now, in democracy, we said all votes are created equal. right? One person, one vote, all votes are equal, majority rules. Majority rules. In capitalism, you have votes and they're money. But how do we count the votes?
Most profitable.
It's very simple. The more money that you have, the more votes you have. That is a cumulative voting system. It's not socialism at all. We do not have a equal, as if given by God on high, distribution of voting power. Theoretically, in democracy, Peter's vote and the guy who shines his shoes at the airport are exactly equal. Exactly equal. When they pull the little curtain, their votes are exactly equal. One person, one vote. So democracy bestows upon you a socialist endowment. My vote's the same as your vote's the same as his vote. Whereas in capitalism, you have a cumulative voting system. The more cumulative, C-U-M-M-U-L-A-T-I-V-E. Did I get it? Yeah. I'm sure that my cell phone would correct my spelling, but I'm not sure what word it would give me. It would take out the extra M. It only has one M?
Yes.
It would take out the extra M, but it may have me saying something that would be profane. I actually have great trouble with that little device. So I always proofread. Theoretically, it's supposed to be efficient. For me, it's the other direction because I have to proofread the thing to go the other direction. Let me give you an example of the inherent difference between the two systems in a practical way. Anybody ever taken an international trip on a very large plane like a 747? Hey, we got a majority of people who have done that. It is my favorite plane. It is a very large plane. And actually the door is on the side of the plane. Remember that one? Okay. When you walk out the ramp or up the ramp, depending on what country you're in, and you go to that door, what determines whether or not you turn right or turn left? Do we have a ballot box? Are all people walking up that ramp created equal? Theoretically?
Created equal, but they don't get equal.
They're created equal when they, on the second Tuesday of November, right? Is it the second Tuesday of November? Is it the first Tuesday in November?
Except this year. This year, second.
You guys are confusing me. You guys are confusing me. What determines whether or not you go right or go left? It's a cumulative voting system, right? There is no referendum. There is no referendum. You buy your way into the big seats, right? Is that the bottom line? You buy your way into the big system. There's no socialism involved. There's no social justice involved. It's really simple. The man or the woman who looks at your ticket says, go left, go right. Now, as a practical matter, Your votes, your cumulative votes, can be in real money, or they can be in this money created by the airlines called points. But the principle holds, right? In that to get one of those big seats, how many points do you have to have? The short answer is a lot, right? The short answer is a lot. Now, once you get on the plane, you return to being a citizen. So you have rights as a citizen under the Constitution. And if someone has too many adult beverages and punches you, you can sue him in a legal system, right? Totally independent of what seat you were sitting in. The essential point I'm trying to make here is our society has two fundamental governance systems. Democracy, which is one person, one vote, and capitalism, which is $1, one vote. Voting power is distributed socially. It's a socialist system. We distribute it socially. Money power is not distributed socially at all. At all. So we have two systems that are inherently antithetical. Antithetical. But they coexist, and they have to coexist. And I like to refer to the coexistence of those two systems as a sacred, unholy marriage. Each one of those words matters. Sacred, unholy marriage. They need each other. They need each other, which leads to my next question. Why do they need each other? Why do they need each other? Let me ask that question in a different way. What is the one thing that capitalism can't do? I would say unambiguously can't do, but let's drop the modifier. What's the one thing that capitalism can't definitionally do?
Legitimize itself. Legitimize itself.
You're almost there. That's an A-. Peter, you want to answer this question?
No.
No, Peter can't answer the question. You're excluded. Majority rules. Peter can't answer questions. It can't. Go ahead and say your answer again.
Legitimize itself.
Legitimize itself. Actually, that's an A answer. That's an A answer. Let me translate your A answer into a bumper sticker. The one thing that capitalism can't do is promulgate, institutionalize a credible, accepted rule of law. Legitimize itself. Capitalism can't do that. And why can't it do that? If I put a group of capitalists, let's call them hardcore capitalists, but we don't have to be hardcore capitalists. A group of capitalists into a room, and said, you must come up with a rule of law, what would it inevitably devolve to? Remembering the model when you get on the plane.
It would devolve into them just making laws. It would devolve into them just making laws that help themselves.
That's the right answer, but it's not a bumper sticker. I speak in bumper stickers. Actually, I speak in metaphors frequently. But you're right. You said that they would create a system that would benefit themselves. The bumper sticker for that is
Money talks.
money talks. You're almost there. You're almost there. The answer is you get the best justice money can buy. Everyone, is that a good fair translation of yours? Yeah. You get the best justice money can buy, because that's what capitalism is about. Who gets the big seat? The people who can pay for the big seat, right? It's a cumulative voting system. So if the size of the stack of the dead presidents in your wallet determines whether or not you're in the little seat or the big seat, the analog of that would be you get the best justice money can buy. That is a huge void in capitalism's ability to be a unifying governance system for a society. Because the rule of law foots back to not how many dead presidents you have on pictures of paper in your wallet, but the proposition that we are all created equal under the law, which is why we have equal votes at the ballot box. So it is a necessity of capitalism to import a credible, sustainable rule of law from outside of itself. Capitalist, and I was one for a very long time, so actually I've trafficked with them for a long time. Capitalists love to whine, moan, complain, and all other sorts of mean and nasty things about government. Is their favorite sport. The irony, however, is capitalism as a system is given a gift by government, which is the product of democracy. A credible, believable rule of law. How credible, how believable, we can have a discussion about that. But as a construct, democracy, which is a socialist system, is a credible system, which gives you another one-liner, sometimes as a defining characteristic, which is nobody is above the law. Anyone ever heard that one? Nobody is above the law. The law doesn't count the number of green pieces of paper in your wallet. So it's acceptable because it's founded on a socialist principle. And there's the tie that binds between democracy and capitalism and why they are a sacred, unholy marriage. Democracy, one person, one vote, can give you a legal system that is credible. And capitalists have to have a legal system that is credible in order to A, do business, and B, not to be shot at high noon by mobs. Not to be shot at high noon by mobs. Capitalism needs to import from democracy the gift of a rule of law. Democracy uniquely can do that. Now, I've just been doing a laudatory for democracy and its wonderful gift of a rule of law. What can democracy not do? Remember, democracy is a socialist system. What can democracy not do?
Fund itself.
Interesting that you put it that. That would be a footnote to a correct answer, so therefore you're good. You're good. A footnote to a correct answer.
What was the footnote again?
What can democracy
The question
not
I heard is the footnote that you're referring to. What was it?
She said it can't fund
Oh,
itself.
it can't fund itself. Okay, yeah.
That it can't fund itself. A governance system for economic activity involves distributing resources in an economy. We hope in some form of efficiency. Can a system of economic enterprise be efficient if it's founded on the doctrine of all people are created equal? Go ahead.
How would we know? Has anybody ever tried it?
Actually, we've tried it in concept. Whether or not we've actually tried it, I mean, I'm old enough to remember communes, but I was never a member of one.
Oh, you should visit our roads.
A commune, theoretically, is a sacred and holy marriage of democracy and economic enterprise. Of economic enterprise. But in that system, there is no means of what Peter mentioned, survival of the fittest. There's no means of the market determining whether or not we should have an Italian restaurant or a Chinese restaurant on the corner. There's no means to determine whether or not you go right or you go left. There's no means to determine whether or not you should be promoted for doing a great job or fired for doing a lousy job. Democracy has beautiful things. You can really become, teary-eyed talking about the concept we're all created equal, we're all equal under the law. I mean, you can actually give a quite evangelical speech for it. I can do that if I was on the political stump. But as a practical matter, you can't run economic enterprise that way. You need to have a system that allocates resources. Democracy is terribly inefficient in allocating resources. Terribly inefficient. So while the socialism inherent in democracy is a beautiful thing and is a gift to capitalism, it's very inefficient. Anybody who's ever served on a nonprofit board can attest to this proposition. Anybody ever served on a nonprofit board? Is efficiency one of the hallmarks? You usually curse the lack of efficiency, right? I've served on more than a few, but it works because it's a non-profit. If profit is the arbitrator of whether or not we do X or Y, it's a very different framework, and it's actually a whole lot more efficient. When I'm on a for-profit board and someone comes with a proposal, I can simply say, the numbers don't pencil out. We're not going to do that. I don't have to offend the person by saying that's a boneheaded idea. I can simply say, your spreadsheet says that this will return 3.2% return on capital in the most optimistic scenario, and our cost of capital is 12%. We ain't doing this. We have an allocation system that actually works. So capitalism's gift to democracy is efficiency. So the marriage is founded on two propositions: equity and establishing a rule of law that applies to all, and efficiency in the allocation of resources. So you have two inherently different systems that are inherently in conflict. But it is not a marriage that can be dissolved because they need each other. So therefore, the issue inevitably is whether or not the marriage is a happy marriage or a marriage in conflict. And I would submit a key issue in determining whether or not the marriage is a happy marriage or a marriage in need of a therapist is the word justice. Justice. Is the capitalist system, which is a cumulative voting system, called the more dollars you have, the more votes you have, is it doing its job of efficiency in the allocation of resources to create a big pie? That's what efficiency does. Theoretically, it creates a big pie. Is it doing its job in creating a big pie? And are the size of the slices being distributed consistent with a smell test of justice and fairness. If they pass the smell test, you have a happy marriage. If they don't pass the smell test, what do you have? I thought somebody was going to say Mr. Trump, but I led you right to the primrose path.
Current state of politics.
Current state of affairs. Is there a happy relationship right now? Is there a happy marriage between democracy and capitalism?
For some people.
For the 1%. For society, do we have a happy marriage? For society, do we have a happy marriage? Have we ever had a happy marriage in our lifetime? This is a very pessimistic group.
Yeah, 1930s.
1930s were a happy marriage? Whoa! That's out of left field. Actually, the first couple decades after World War II were a reasonably... Huh?
For the white men.
Touche. Touche, you win. Okay, let's put it, rather than saying happy marriage. Has there ever been a time in America where we could pretend we had a happy marriage? Whether it was happy or not.
Happy days.
Happy days. Right now, we don't have a happy marriage. And we can't even pretend we do. Pretend is an important currency in civility. Pretend is an important. Anybody old enough to remember the motto of the 1972 Mets, or is it the 1982 Mets? Any baseball fans? Tug McGraw?
Gotta believe.
Gotta believe! Gotta believe. That's called pretend. That's called pretend. And actually, was it the 82 Mets? I think it was the 82 Mets. He was the catcher in his whole... We just got to believe that we will get to the World Series, and we will get to the World Series. And son of a gun, they got to the World Series. Democracy and capitalism as a marriage has got to have an element of belief, of faith. Some would call it confidence. That I too can aspire to going to Asia in the big seat. Now, whether or not that's a realistic proposition doesn't matter. If I believe that I can aspire to riding in the big seat, then I don't openly resent the guy who is flying in the big seat. With me there? However, if I think he not only bought his way into the big seat, but also buys his way within the legal system, we have a societal problem. We have a societal problem. Now, how we stand on time? There's not a clock in this room.
Yeah, behind you.
I only got 5 minutes.
No, 20 minutes.
I got 20 minutes. Oh, I got time for a lot of fun. Huh? Leave a little time for Q&A. I got plenty I want to talk about. But the big thing, I think you build what I was going to talk about, a civics lesson for the real world. And I'm talking a lot about civics because I want you to understand that what's going on in our society is not inherently strange, bizarre, or inexplicable. The marriage between democracy and capitalism has got a fundamental conflict. A fundamental conflict, which is inevitable from time to time, because the two systems are grounded on different foundations. We hear the phrase democratic capitalism all the time as if they are one and the same. No, they're the marriage of two inherently different governance systems. Also, the good senator from this state introduced to the national lexicon a new construction called democratic socialism, and almost all of my acquaintances and friends had a simple retort to Bernie's introduction of the words democratic socialism. This country will never elect a socialist. It was like he had shot somebody's dog by uttering the word. Whereas a practical matter, democracy is inherently a socialist system if you believe in one person, one vote. So there was nothing inherently immoral about Bernie's choice of words. Democratic socialism. Actually being clever, he would have put it somewhat differently. He could have said, you can't get it on a bumper sticker though. Democracy grounded in socialism and the pursuit of capitalist efficiency. Someone reduce that one to a bumper sticker for me. But that really is what we're talking about. They're two different systems. And so the marital strife that we're having right now, to me, is quite explicable. I'm going to use 7 minutes to give you a simple example of that in a very practical way. And we might have time, I don't know. I said, democracy gives us the rule of law. There are a number of things in the rule of law, which is, you can't punch out a person with impunity. There is a consequence. That's criminal law and that sort of thing. But what capitalism needs most in many respects is a law for enforceability of contracts. Enforceability of contracts. Whether or not you're buying a car or a house or running huge portfolios, as Peter and I used to do for a living. You need to have a belief in a legal system that will enforce contracts. And if the legal system is founded on the principle of one person, one vote, if the lawmakers are the result of that system, then the laws have legitimacy, and then the elected bodies also appoint judges who rule on those laws. At the state level, we actually elect judges. I know we do down in Pennsylvania, and do we do that here in Vermont? Do you elect judges, or are they all appointed? But they derive their legitimacy from the electoral process because they're appointed. So you need enforceability of contracts. Now, debt arrangements are a contract, right? The note on your car is a contract. What does that note, as a practical matter, mean? If you pay the note every month right on schedule, whose car is it? It's your car, right? What if you decide to skip 3 months in making your car payment? What happens? It's no longer your car. That's a contract, right? That can be enforced. It's my car if I pay the debt. If I don't pay the debt, it is the debt holder's car, right? That is a contract. So this whole concept of what constitutes fulfilling a contract is critically important in a society. All of you have in your pocket, if you don't, then we need to pass an offering plate and make sure you do. All of you have in your pocket a contract. This is a contract. In fact, if you've got one, pull one out, because I want to read something off of this. This is a...
Just like at a restaurant, John, you don't have your wallet.
We do need to pass the offering plate for this fellow.
He's the CFO, too.
At the very top of this thing, I'll read it for you. At the very top of this thing, it says, this is a Federal Reserve note. Everyone read that? It's a note. Well, a note implies that it's a debt instrument, right? You have a note on your car, note on your house, a Federal Reserve note. So this must be a Federal Reserve asset or liability? It's a liability, right? A note is a liability. It's a Federal Reserve note. It's a liability of the Federal Reserve. Now, what's it say on the right-hand side? United States of America, right? Everyone with me there on that one? United States of America. Now, below the United States of America and a fancy little symbol, there is a signature. Somebody read off the signature on your handout. I didn't hand it out to you, though. What does it say? Who signed this thing? Secretary of Treasury. That's very interesting. At the very top, it said this is a Federal Reserve note, but the signature on the note is not the chairperson of the Federal Reserve, it is the Secretary of Treasury. Anyone want to give me an explanation why we have one entity's name at the top, but the secretary of another entity signing it? Anybody got a thesis?
Enforcing it.
Huh?
Is it enforcing it?
Enforcing it?
Legitimizing it.
Very back.
Is the Secretary of Treasury the debt holder? Is that like the person would that be the reason?
That would be a passing example. It's a tough question. It's a tough question. Because there's no easy answer. The Federal Reserve is a creature of Congress. is a creature of Congress. Under the Constitution of we the people, the founding of our democracy, not that we were really good small d Democrats when we founded this country. It was progress, not perfection. The Constitution of the United States gives our elected representatives two incredible powers. We, the people, give to our elected officials via the Constitution two incredible powers. Number one, the right, I love how they use this word in the Constitution, to lay taxes. We, the people, give our elected, one person, one vote, representatives, the constitutional power to impose taxes. And in the Constitution, it's called lay taxes. Second thing the Constitution does is to give our elected representatives the power to coin money and regulate the value thereof. Those are two really powerful instruments of our government. Gets back to the funding issue. Democracy can fund itself because the founding doctrine, founding document for democracy, gives the leaders with the force of law the power to lay taxes and to regulate, to coin and regulate the value of money. And it all comes together on this piece of paper. This is a Federal Reserve note, but this is an instrument of the United States government. Peter's a former Fed official, so hopefully I have not offended him. This, I know I haven't. This is an instrument of we the people. And there's one other thing I'm going to read on here that is the most important issue in our political, economic, and electoral cycle right now. It's on the left-hand side of your note. This is really hard for my 59-year-old eyes. On the left-hand side, underneath the symbol, there is a phrase. Is anybody with young enough eyes and a handout in their hands able to read that to me? What does it say?
This note is legal tender for all debts, public and private.
This note is legal tender for all debts, public and private. What does that mean? What does that mean? Go ahead.
You can use it to pay for any of your debts.
You can use it to pay for any of your debts. That's an A answer. That is a answer. Meaning if you have a note on your car, which means that if you don't pay the note, you don't have a car. And suppose your note requires you to pay $137 a month, and you walk in with 137 of these, that you still have a car? Is that a fair example of what that means? That's pretty powerful stuff, right? Legal tender. Legal tender for all debts, public and private. So it has hugely important, and I can't sue you if you owe me money and you give me the right number of these. This is a contract. I can fulfill a contract with this. From actually, and here we get to the power of government issue, what is the most important liability in your life? Financial liability in your life. Mortgage? What comes before the mortgage?
Taxes.
Bingo! If you don't pay your mortgage, the bank can take back your house, right? Not a good outcome. If you don't pay your taxes, what can happen?
Go to jail.
Go to jail!
You can become a Republican nominee.
Huh? You can be what?
You can become a Republican nominee for president.
Oh, you can become a Republican, a very smart Republican nominee, right? Very smart. That would be legally not paying your taxes. That would be, you know, the best justice money can buy, all of that sort of stuff, right? But that was the right A answer. The government has the legal power to impose taxes by the Constitution. If you don't pay your taxes, you can go to jail. So this instrument has credibility, first and foremost, not just because it can pay his car loan and your mortgage, because it can fulfill your tax liability. Yes, Peter?
No, you can't. The IRS refuses to take currency in payment of taxes. To avoid money laundering. You're included in paying your taxes in legal tender, notwithstanding that it says all that's public and private.
They should another note on their note, pay your taxes.
So, little conflict of statutes.
Peter is absolutely correct.
That's why our comment about belief is important.
Belief is important.
We believe we can pay our taxes, but we actually can't.
Yeah. Peter is absolutely correct. He's not trying to rain on my parade. He and I have known each other for almost a quarter century. He technically, you cannot with this. Now, if you have a claim at your bank on these, what can you do with the claim at your bank? You can pay your taxes, right? Actually, if you write a check at your bank, you could write it to the IRS, right? And this is reflecting my age. I don't know if it actually still works in the world of ATMs. Maybe Peter will know. But back when I was in college, we didn't have ATMs. So if you needed $25, which was a large sum in the 1970s, by the way, that was spending money for 3 weeks. Not 3 hours, but 3 weeks. We didn't have ATMs, so you would go down to the bank and write a check to cash. Has anybody ever written a check to cash? So the concept works, right? You can write a check to cash, and they will give you these things called legal tender. You can write the same check to the IRS, pay your tax bill, and they can no longer do what? Put you in jail. This is really powerful stuff. This is really powerful stuff. So the management of this thing called legal tender is inherently a government enterprise. We happened to choose to delegate, Congress does, through the Federal Reserve Act, operational independence about the creation and distribution of these suckers, or these suckers one step removed. these suckers one step removed. The Federal Reserve is not enshrined in the Constitution whatsoever. Whatsoever. Actually, the president doesn't have the power. Congress has the power to declare that which is, to declare taxes, and equally important, to declare that which can be used to pay your taxes. This instrument derives its power because it is legal tender for a liability you have as a citizen called taxes. If it's good for taxes, it's good for everything else. Now, suppose, I actually did this in college, so I don't know if it still goes on in college. You have a little Saturday night poker game, and somebody goes, light the pot. Everyone know what that phrase means? Light the pot? Okay, shouldn't have used that analogy. That means that you're out of chips, but you know you have a really good hand, so you don't want to drop out because you don't have any more money. If you don't want to drop out, but you don't have any more of these in your pocket, what can you do? You can put a IOU in the pot, right? That's called going light of the pot. Now, it depends upon who you're playing poker with, whether or not they will allow you to do that. That's called credit. Whether or not your credit is acceptable or not is an open question amongst the half a dozen people sitting around the table. But let's suppose that they're friends of yours and they will take your credit and you go light the pot. You got a full house. You're pretty confident. I got a full house. There are no wild cards. That's a pretty good hand. Let's further, it turns out that one of the other guys or gals at the table has 4 of a kind. Guess what? You lost. Your IOU is now money in circulation, right? The guy who had the 4 of the kind has everybody else's money and your IOU. Can he pay his taxes without your IOU? Huh? You don't think so? Can he buy a sandwich at the local deli with your IOU? For sure not. So the act of me going light the pot and putting in my IOU is I'm creating money. I'm creating money, right? But my money doesn't have the full faith and credit of the United States of America, and doesn't have written on it this note, conceived at 1 o'clock in the morning on Saturday night, is legal tender for all debts, public and private, and Subway sandwiches. The ability to create this stuff is we the people, and it is a really cool thing. Anybody ever had the urge, just mentally, not physically, to go into your cellar and print some of these things up? I have. I confess. I've had the urge. But if I did that, what would happen? The legal system would put me in jail, right? It's called counterfeiting. So this is a unique, wonderful sort of stuff. The Federal Reserve has a lot of delegated authority in creating this stuff. Or claims, electronic claims that represent this stuff. I want to stress that, so I don't want to be corrected by Peter again. Electronic claims that represent a claim on this stuff. And I think the Fed's done a fantastic job in its history. But the Fed should not be looked at as a unique creation that cannot be changed is the message that I'm going to leave you with today. Because going back a half an hour ago, the distribution of capitalism fruits is about the distribution of these claims. It's about the distribution of these claims. Does it pass the smell test of social justice? If it doesn't pass the smell test of social justice, then ultimately Congress has to change things. And it can, in fact, change the charter of the central bank, which is an agency of government, not the fourth branch of government. Now, you will not find a bigger fan of the Federal Reserve than me. But my civics lesson is don't think in terms of monetary arrangements in our economy as a technocratic venture. It is a we the people venture. And actually, in the last 30 years, the 1% has gotten a much bigger stack of these things. The non-1%, not so much. And I'll conclude with a simple statistic that came, ironically enough, from a Federal Reserve survey. The Fed's a huge research organization besides being in charge of this stuff. Looking at household finances and consumer finances, half of Americans, fully half of Americans in the survey conducted by the Fed, so it's credible, say that they don't have the means to easily, comfortably handle an unexpected $400 expenditure. Half of Americans can't handle an unexpected $400 expenditure. That tells me half of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. I haven't actually bought one in a while. The last one I bought was at Sears Roebuck. That's where you always go to get a washer and dryer, right? Sears Roebuck. Huh? What does a washer or a dryer cost? Anybody bought one recently? 700?
I was gonna say 1,200.
Huh?
1,200, 1,400.
For a pair?
Yeah.
12, 14, so it's $600 a piece. So what the Fed data says that half of Americans don't have the ability to underwrite the washer going out. That doesn't seem to me to be a massive sort of traumatic event in life, you know. The washer went out. We've had the washer for 10 years. The washer went out. We need to get a new washer. That's $600. We can't handle $400. There's something wrong in a society where you can't replace a broken washer. What's a muffler system on a car cost? I don't know. Is it $400? Has anybody replaced a muffler in a while? There are a lot of things in life that are unexpected that are going to cost $400.
A chipped tooth will cost you.
Huh?
A chipped tooth will cost you a lot.
A chipped tooth will cost you $400. Something is wrong in our society when half of Americans can't handle a chipped tooth, a broken washer, or an exhaust system on their car. That's what our election is about. It's why in this election we emerged with the two extremes. we had Bernie Sanders on one end and Mr. Trump on the other end. Mr. Sanders said, this is just wrong. Whereas Mr. Trump says, the problem with trickle down, we have this big pool at the 1% and it trickles down to everybody. The problem with trickle down is not as a concept, but the pool of these things at the very top ain't big enough. If we just had a bigger tower of wealth in the 1%, if they didn't have to pay such onerous taxation, then the drip feed of trickle down would solve problems. Now, actually, reality is somewhere in between. I don't curse capitalist as a cohort, just individual capitalist. I'm a capitalist. It actually did very, very, very well by me. So I don't curse capitalism. But the fact of the matter is, capitalism lives under the construct of a society grounded in socialism, one person, one vote. So in the next 5 to 10 years, capitalism learns an appreciation for socialism, or it's going to be shoved down its throat. On the other side of things, those who felt the burn have to have a greater appreciation that capitalism does have its blessings, which is called efficiency. That we cannot run our economy like a commune. I'm not saying that Bernie ever said that, but we can't run our economy like a commune, and we can't run it for a shiny city on a hill owned by the 1%. That in the next years ahead, we have to find a place that's more comfortable in the middle. This election is the beginning of marital therapy. It is not the end. I pray it's not the end of marital therapy. Marital therapy should continue indefinitely in our system, but we should be going twice a week right now. And the Federal Reserve should be in the room. The Federal Reserve should be in the room. Because for good or for bad, what the Fed has done, because it's been the only game in town, has made the rich richer in the last 8 years. And I'm not saying that pejoratively, I'm just saying it descriptively. So marital therapy for all, Federal Reserve included. God bless America. Thank you very much.